Peter Richardson, and he said we would never, with the burrs and cutters, cutting holes in people's skull, have something to do with that shape or that big.
Right.
So he was very curious, and we sent him the pictures to have a look at, and he said we would never in a million years make a hole, with the trepanning tools, or burrs as they call them, anything like that. So that was interesting. So it's more the later stuff, typical rectal core.
Yeah.
It's the same hole, but when you pull the tail back, it
exposes
the hole.
Yeah.
This was quite a case, which is in Shropshire, and Phil Hoyle has been keeping tabs on. There's a whole range of farms within an area of, I don't know, 10 or 15 square miles. Some farms are only 2 miles apart, and they're having repeated problems. And this had a whole raft of injuries, typical rectal core, ears to down to skull. They had this rather large hole in the abdomen, and in the hip, in the groin, this hole on one side. Now Jeff Hay at Harrogate said to us, with sheep and lambs, in the groin is the gland that secretes the lanolin from the wool of the sheep.
Oh, right.
So it looks like for some reason they want that gland. And I find several times this dimension of 23 millimetres keeps cropping up, but it could be coincidence. I don't know. Tongue sliced across, eye out, and the ears cropped. And in the throat, it had 2 small holes, which were 2 and 3 millimetres, and a bit of blood staining on the fleece, as though the blood has been taken from that area. There's 2 holes again with the abdomen. Now the farmer and his wife were so keen, they wanted an official response to this. Their veterinary practice in Shrewsbury is one of these government practices that have affiliation with the National, they call them Veterinary Laboratories Association or something like that. And they were a bit annoyed because they got the report back, which I have a copy of there, which they were billed £30, and they said nothing that they didn't know already, which we'd told them. And in fact, in the report, they didn't even mention the rectal core. It was just not admitted. And as for this hole, they said this was indicative of being pecked by birds.
Oh, right.
So they were a bit cross.
Dear.
Also, this is the location where it was found. We've had mutilation cases just across the valley there. It's the rear valley. The left ear was gone, and the tag, still clamped, was on the grass. He'd left it exactly where it was found.
Right.
It's a close-up of it. I mentioned this to Linda Moulton-Howe, and she's found the same thing on ear tags. When they're clamped for life, so you can't take them off.
That's right.
So for some reason they've taken the ear, taken all the trouble to remove the clamp, and there's no evidence of bits of tissue or skin attached. And why they keep doing this, I don't know. A farm 2 miles away, which Phil has been going to for a while, and we found 3 lambs in the field. We just went on spec, having been to the farm up the road, and found these. This one, tongue severed at the tip. And I thought it was at the roots we found. That's that one. There's 2 more up here. I took a picture of the back end that shows that's normal, just a difference. And it had this little hole in the abdomen there, about 10 millimetres across. What had been taken out, I don't know. And one of the others up the road had this same tongue, diagonal, shaved in areas here, which we don't know what that's for. Could be birds. And another one that's been there for a while. It was quite desiccated, but the tongue missing, ears, and eyes, but then birds take the eyes. The farmers say they can't turn them over to get the other eye.
Yeah, that's right.
This is one of Phil's animals, which is over the hill about 5 miles away in Shropshire again on the Welsh border. And both the glands, or there were these holes in the hip that suggest to take the glands, but the face was stripped left side,
there. Mm. Yeah.
tongue out,
Yeah.
and the throat all opened up.
Mm. Yeah.
And then when we come to, I'll come to one in Tobberton in a minute, but this was a very good case. The farmer took these pictures. This was in West Wales.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Plymp. It was a ram, but he had lost several sheep with the same sort of mutilation, 6 in a week.
Right.
And you saw the advert in the Farmer's Guardian we had in the appeal, and he rang me up. And he kindly sent me the pictures and he lent me the negatives.
Oh, right.
And it's got the classic jaw strip, it's like the cattle in the States.
Yeah.
It had this little hole about the body here, which is close up a minute. The throat opened up just like that one in Shropshire, and then showing Tobberton. Underneath the jaw, and the skin here is cleanly pared back off the bone.
Right.
And the guy who works in an abattoir says to me, that's very difficult to do, to get such clean bone. You've got to use steam, some hot temperature to clean the bone and get the skin off. And I thought this line here was quite interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's a natural thing, I don't know. It's like almost like a weld.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And when you go to this hole in the body here, and the picture close up, and again you've got this teardrop elliptical shape, just like the lamb in Bed Gellet and its hip. And the farmer said the staining there, the blood, is only because when he found it, it was clean, and when he brought it in the tractor in this sort of bucket thing, there was obviously some residual fluid in the carcass which seeped out in moving off the field back into the yard. He said it was clean as a whistle round that hole when he found it. The genitals have gone, totally clean as anything.
Yeah.
And then this is the view at Tobberton on the 15th of June.
Right.
Again, I couldn't find anything wrong with it. There was no rectal core or anything, but the classic jaw strip.
Jaw stripping,
The tongue was missing, and the throat opened up again, and there was 2. I thought there might be tendons or arterial cords of some sort, but they were like drums, weren't they, Robert? You could always twang them like a guitar.
Right.
And I put my fingers on them, but they weren't severed. That's the point. And yet, there's material tissue has been taken from behind. So if a predator had been chewing or a bird, these would have been severed.
Yes, they would.
That's for sure.
That's right.
It's the same one, and the sneak edge. The ears are there. The eyes out. Possibly a bit of brain. There's a massive cavity there, but I don't know. But the farmer's wife, Diane, she noticed, we've heard about this before, when they found the carcass in the morning, and we were here 24 hours after, so it was pretty fresh when we got to it, she said there was a strange odour, like chemically plasticky smell, wasn't it, Robert? Like she described it when you buy a plastic tool or a toy or something, it's all sealed up in a bag and you rip the bag off. You get this factory plastic smell. But it went off after a few hours, and by the time we got there the following day, there was no smell. But she couldn't describe it. And then the biggest case we had in Gloucestershire in October 13th, 2002, was on the Severn Estuary, between Lydney and Chepstow, and they've had 30 odd sheep killed, but there were some alive at the time. And we heard about this because it was on the national press, on the CFAX on the television. And then a guy rang me up who's into crop circles, who lives down in Wiltshire, where Glastonbury lives. And he told me which TV company it was. It was in Bristol. And I rang the newsroom, and they gave me the phone number of the farmer. And Robert and I set off at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Drove down there, and that was after I'd phoned him, and I said, were any of these had a jaw strip down one side? And he said, there it is. He said, goodness me, yes, there was one. So I said, well, can you tell me if the tongue was missing?
Right.
So he said, I'll go and have a look. And he rang me back about 2 hours later and said, yeah, you're right, the tongue's missing. Now he was then a bit intrigued that how did I know, 200 miles away, that the...
I think this, do you mind me interrupting?
Tongue,
She,
yes.
she put the dog out then,
Yeah.
so he can't...
Anyway, we went down and the police were involved because the rumour thought was that they'd been shot
Yes, yeah.
with dogs. So there was sort of quite a few of them, like crushing injuries in the on the skull, and thin bits of skin that was under the chin, and then quite common. Quite a few of them had holes around the back of the ears at the top of the head, and then smaller holes elsewhere.
That pile of them, you see the farmer put that pile
Yeah.
Yes, he brought them off the field, which was about...
Yeah, it's alright, yeah.
It was right by the river estuary.
We had one down the road, when there was about 80 in a field, and they found them all in the corner of the field, dead, piled on top of each other.
Yes.
And they, of course, the police came out and did what they do, you know, reported and they said, well, it must have been dogs that chased them down to the bottom of the field and they suffocated each other, jumping on top of each other. But how did the bloody top one suffocate?
Yes,
Yeah.
quite. You
Yeah,
could have
yeah.
some of the ones at the bottom. It's a daft thing to say.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was local then, Tom?
Yeah, it was just down the road, yeah.
How many?
About 80, I think, in that field that night.
Yeah, been alright.
80 or
80.
80.
Mm.
Goodness me.
Well, I mean, the holes that were behind the ears on these sheep were obviously samples had been taken.
Yeah, yeah.
They were very specifically positioned just behind each ear, about a 10 pence piece size hole.
And then inside that was a smaller hole. I'll tell you about it in a sec.
Yeah.
Had this black-headed one also had the tongue cut sort of diagonally.
That's fairly common, we're finding, isn't it, Dave?
Yes. Now the vets, Jane Glover Hill was called in. The client's been the police. Fortunately, while we were there, she turned up to remove 3 heads and take 1 whole sheep. And they were basically going to X-ray the heads to look for signs of lead shot or bullets. But she said more or less on the time that they're not indicative of bullet holes. You know, the injuries didn't sort of. And she said that the sheep, because of the way the teeth are arranged, if they do bite their own tongues in fear, it's only the very, very tip by the front teeth. You can't do it back as far as that. And one of the heads she took was this black one. And then we got helped her in the car boot with the sheep. It was a bit heavy, and all the other chaps stayed by, including the police officers, didn't want to get their hands dirty. And I think they were a bit put off when they watched her come out with this big knife and cut the heads off. So she said, have you got time? Would we like to go back to the surgery with it while they x-ray the heads? Well, what an opportunity.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely, yeah.
So off we went down to Chepstow, where the veterinary practice was. And these shots we took inside the practice. And then she found this black-headed one, which was very interesting. It's probably the most interesting thing. You can see it there. She found a knitting needle, but the 2 smaller holes each side of the head, which were within the bigger 3/4-inch hole behind the ear, were not connected. So what she was investigating to see if that was an entry and exit wound.
Yes.
But she said they lined up like this, sort of lined up. But they were in sort of alignment, but didn't connect. And she describes in the report something like a metal clamp around the head, which is penetrated in, like gripping action.
Yeah, gripping thing, yeah.
And then she managed to force the knitting needle through, and it went through the gap. There's a small gap between the brain and the top of the skull. And she said it's missed the brain and gone across the top. Came out the other side.
I see.
And again, more of this had like the cut across the top of the ears, like this one did. So apart from the 2 holes behind the ear, there was like a long slit in the top of the skull. And when you pulled it apart, to expose the top of the cranium. You can see the bunch of heads. So that's Jane, and this is an Australian veterinary, a vet who was on a sort of training or exchange thing in England for a while.
Right.
She's going back to Australia now.
So what conclusions did they come to with this?
Well, there were no conclusion. They were
No
baffled.
answer.
They couldn't honestly say.
Yeah, but the main thing was that when the X-rays were done,
Yeah.
which they are there was no metal fragments anywhere in the head at all, proving conclusively that there hadn't been guns used.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was right on a narrow strip of land between the estuary, right opposite Albury-on-Severn nuclear power station,
Was it?
a mile and a quarter across, against this railway track. And the theory was that some people, along with the dogs, had walked along this very busy railway track, and